Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we turn to talking about the ongoing drama surrounding the Democratic presidential candidates here in America, all vying for a chance to take on our based God Emperor Donald J. Trump in our general election this fall. Things are certainly starting to heat up now that we're in the new year too, and only about 10 months from when voting takes place. This month of January has not only seen a number of candidates drop out, including Julian Castro and Marianne Williamson, but also Cory Booker recently suspended his campaign too, taking away the last remnant of so-called diversity from the left-wing contender's side. Now, I bring this up not because skin color or heritage are political qualifiers for me, but really, identity politics is the whole platform and basis for the entire liberal side. That's why it's so funny to see their last remaining 7 candidates only contain one sort of minority, an Asian who doesn't really get the victim points a black or brown minority would. But the left's hypocritical lack of diversity now, a principle which they push and hold over everyone else's heads, but lack within their own ranks. Well, the irony of that incongruity isn't exactly what the big story is about this week, but it is highly related. What everyone is talking about this week, though, is the escalating tensions between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. These two old farts locked horns with each other at the recent Democrat debates this week, held in Iowa and aired on CNN. There, Warren launched a pretty deliberate and possibly libelous attack against Bernie Sanders, with what appeared to be the assistance of the debate's moderators and hosts, CNN. These attacks, although surprising to some, they also are expected to come as these presidential candidates and their primaries heat up. In addition to those in the know and those aware, Elizabeth Warren has modeled her campaign off of Hillary Clinton's previous one, even hiring a number of Hill Dog's former staffers. Well, needless to say, with that in mind, we weren't too surprised to see what Warren's doing now, implementing more of Hillary's shady tactics, including corrupting the process and getting the press and TV networks to help you in underhanded ways, in order to take down your opponents like Bernie Sanders, who was also Hillary's opponent in 2016. Yes, Warren is basically Hillary 2.0 at this point, and in true tradition with that position, Warren is now imitating the way Hillary took down her own biggest adversary, who also now happens to be Warren's, Senator Bernie Sanders, of course. Now, before we get too far off track here, let's turn back to the beginning of this week and see where this whole Bernie versus Warren thing started. On Monday, Elizabeth Warren made a pretty interesting and unprovable claim. It's all discussed in this biased but informational article from CNN called "Sanders and Warren Feud Escalates Before CNN Debate in Iowa." Check this one out. The uneasy peace between the two leading Democratic 2020 progressives broke down Monday night as Senator Elizabeth Warren publicly accused Senator Bernie Sanders of telling her during a private meeting in December 2018 that he didn't think a woman could win. The explosive accusation, which Sanders had previously denied in response to a CNN report, opened a chasm between the two leading liberals in the race and significantly raised the stakes ahead of Tuesday night's CNN and Des Moines registered Democrat presidential debate, the final one before voters cast their first ballots of the presidential season next month. Later on Monday night, Sanders' senior advisor Jeff Weaver suggested in an interview with CNN's Chris Cuomo that Warren had misconstrued the conversation with Sanders. The controversy raised fresh questions about the importance of identity politics and Democratic politics amid ongoing accusations that the top of the party's field isn't sufficiently diverse. Among the topics that came up was what would happen if Democrats nominated a female candidate. Warren said of the meeting with Sanders in a news release Monday night, "I thought a woman could win." He disagreed. Okay, well, lots to unpack here. First, what's the big deal with this anyway? Even if we assume this is all true, which I highly doubt, but if we give them the benefit of the doubt, even so, nothing wrong has actually happened. Saying you don't think a woman could win shouldn't be some sort of high crime, especially since by all accounts, this appears to be just a claim made based on nothing biased or sexist. Anyway, I mean, that's what's being implied here, isn't it? Because if not, there's nothing wrong with saying a woman couldn't win, or you could say a man couldn't win, or a Floridian or a little person couldn't win. None of those claims have inherent offensiveness, only when you add the implication of some kind of bias or hatred against the party the claim is made against. Sorry if that sounds a bit confusing, but we need to spell all of this out because people just rolling with it and not thinking further into it much, that's what manipulative Democrats like Warren and CNN are counting on us to do. They want to say something like, Bernie said a woman can't win, that's wrong just because, which of course implies sexism too. And not to defend Bernie here too much, but this isn't sexist at all. If he said something actually offensive, like say, women can't win because they aren't smart enough, well, that's what would cross a line. But what's been supposedly said so far hasn't, as I've gone over. It's also worth bringing up the lack of diversity angle here again, because now we can see how Warren is using that and she's trying to spin it into an advantage for her. Sure, Liz is white like the rest of the Dem candidates now, but at least least she's a woman, and while ladies aren't actually minorities, they actually make up a small percentage more than men. Regardless though, women do still get special treatment, at least in left-wing circles. So Warren is capitalizing on the liberals' lack of diversity, and she's trying to use it as a way to attack Bernie now, her biggest opponent. Her goal appears to be to use Bernie's gender and past statements against him, concocting this sort of out there implied underhanded attack, which actually is just misconstruing what Sanders even said in the first place. But alas, the truth and what's right hardly matters as much as what ideas and claims and statements, or sometimes lies, become most popular and gain traction in the public and in our country's zeitgeist. In her statement on Monday, Warren said she had no interest in discussing this private meeting any further because Bernie and I have far more in common than our differences on punditry. I'm in this race to talk about what's broken in this country and how to fix it, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. I know Bernie is in the race for the same reason, she said. We have been friends and allies in this fight for a long time, and I have no doubt we will continue to work together to defeat Donald Trump and put our government on the side of the people. Right. Well, this statement turned out to be totally false in the end. Warren claims here that she didn't want to talk about this supposed meeting and Bernie's alleged sexist reply to it anymore. But then the very next day, when the debates took place in Iowa, Liz happily talked about this shit again and turned it into this pathetic attack and mudslinging contest against Bernie. Now, again, I'm not here to defend Bernie Sanders per se. I'm just here to call out Warren's shitty tactics, and also I want to point out the parallels between this event and how it's the same way Hillary Clinton conducted herself in her own Democratic primaries back in 2016. Remember, it came out later that Hillary undeniably cheated her way to the top back then. The Democrats colluded and turned on Bernie Sanders back then too, making Hillary the nominee even though Bernie was clearly more popular and probably had a better chance at winning too. And it's important to remember this because now it's really looking like the Dems are shaping up to screw Bernie Sanders over once again. And although I don't support the guy personally, and I clearly think Trump will win the election, but I also think it's wrong to pull this bullshit over and over. The Democrats deserve to be called out too, obviously. Next, let's move forward and see what happened at the actual debate on Tuesday. It was an overly long, rather boring affair overall, but I did find one clip and sequence of events that really encapsulates the shady way both Warren and the moderators at CNN were acting. Check out this video where Bernie directly denies and explains why he also doesn't believe in this "a woman can't win" claim. Take a look.
That in 2018, you told her that you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on this because this is what Donald Trump and maybe some of the media want. Anybody knows me, knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States. Go to YouTube today.
And well, sure enough, Bernie is right about this. He even goes on to say you can find clips of him on YouTube saying there could be a woman president 30 years ago. And this also turned out to be true. We'll get to that clip soon, but first, let's just discuss the petty he said, she said nature of this premise. Warren claims Bernie said a thing in a private meeting from 2 years ago, which has no video, audio, or any evidence it happened whatsoever, which sounds like the perfect situation to just make some shit up or at least purposely misconstrue and manipulate and pervert what he actually said. And the fact that CNN would choose to not only go with this hearsay but also support and promote it in the most obvious and biased way possible, well, this is rather embarrassing for the network, surely. It's like they're not even pretending to be a neutral, non-biased news outlet anymore. CNN is basically saying, hey, we're liberals, we lie about conservatives, and even, sometimes, we'll make shit up about certain Democrats too, while trying to support our preferred ones. They did this in 2016, siding with Hillary, feeding her questions before the debates, and now they're doing it with Elizabeth Warren too. And both times they, of course, were shitting all over Bernie Sanders, the actually popular frontrunner for their party, who has more of a chance of winning too, especially when compared to these shady politicians he's competing with. With that said, I would place a large amount of blame on CNN for this too. They're a major part of the reason the Democrats lost in 2016, and it's why they're going to lose again this year too. Now, before getting back to the debate, let's first cut to that older clip where Bernie said a woman could be president, all the way back in the 1980s.
Boy, it's time for a black president. The real issue is not whether you're black or white, whether you're a woman or a man. In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States. The real issue is Whose side are you on?
There you have it. All the way back in 1988, Bernie was preaching about identity politics. But more importantly, he directly says a woman could be president. So why then would he say there couldn't be a woman president 30 years later? A lot has sure changed since then, and certainly it would be more likely to happen now. And this is all happening because it's more than likely Bernie didn't say this in the meeting with Warren at all. And if he did, it would be in a much different context and probably phrased differently. Perhaps he said none of these women who are running could win, meaning maybe current female candidates Warren, Klobuchar, and Kamala Harris, for example. He probably thought they couldn't win, and he's right. But that's not a sexist claim. He's just stating a political opinion, which happens to be dead right, but also not PC enough for leftists. Back to the recent debate now, though, because this exchange is about to get even more uncomfortable. Watch this clip.
You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
I disagreed.
What a pathetic excuse for a moderator. I mean, this biased CNN lady couldn't even get her question out properly. First she stumbles, and then when it's finally delivered, it completely contradicts what Bernie just said. All she had to do was say something like, allegedly Bernie said this, but instead, she still acts as if it's a fact and undeniably true, even though Bernie just denied it and also supported his denial with examples of when he contradicted the supposed thing he said. Clearly, CNN is in the bag for Warren here then, and they're trying to spin this and get Bernie out of the primaries unfairly once again. I mean, why else would CNN believe one of these candidates over the other? As we went over, we have no video or recordings or even notes from this meeting in question. In fact, we have evidence that Bernie supports the opposite of what they're all claiming he said, but CNN takes Elizabeth Warren's word for it anyway, even though they could just as easily take Bernie's. Finally, before we go, we've got one more big and embarrassing example of both how CNN is biased in this fight and also of how the Democratic silliness is reaching a huge amount of craziness. Here's a clip that CNN released later on, after the debate concluded. Here they wanted to show everyone this tiff between Warren and Bernie that happened on stage at the end of the debate. Check this one out.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion, we'll have that discussion. You called me, you told me. All right, let's not do it now.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Awkward. Warren denies Bernie a handshake first, then she makes a pretty outrageous and seemingly staged claim. And also, to follow that up, Tom Steyer goes in to handshake Bernie afterwards, probably because he's just happy to be there at all. But yeah, back to Warren, it really did seem like she had this moment in line and everything ready to go. Maybe she even worked it out with CNN beforehand. They did know they were going to record this and show it later on. The thing is though, just like with Warren's first claim, this "you called me a liar" line is something Bernie didn't say either. Sure, he denied saying something himself, but that's because you all asked him to admit to saying something he didn't say. So denying that might imply someone is lying or making it up, but it's hardly as egregious or aggressive as what's being led on. And certainly Warren's being more aggressive since she's the one making claims about him, and she started this, and punching first matters. Really, Bernie is just the guy who defended himself. And then Warren, the one making shit up probably, she says Bernie called her a liar. I can understand why Sanders is a little baffled by all this too. This is some low-level, amateur, in-the-gutter kind of behavior, and it's stuff that hardly makes sense in the moment, especially when you're in the heat of it. After the fact, it's easy for us to catch on and see what's happening from the sidelines, but I don't blame him for being a little thrown off. In the end, Elizabeth Warren must have seen that her days were numbered in this presidential primary. She's been somewhat close to the lead for a while now, but she never quite could match up to Biden or Bernie. So, with that in mind, this little kerfuffle was Liz acting out in desperation, seeing that the primaries are getting closer, and if her star doesn't start to shine brighter somehow now, she will soon begin to fade away into nothingness rather quickly. So Warren decided to lie once again, and she signed a deal with the devil, or in this case, CNN, who some might argue is worse. CNN supported and propped up Liz's anti-Bernie attacks happily, because they've always been anti-Bernie from the start, just like how they were 4 years ago when they helped Hillary cheat to beat him back then too. What do you guys think? Did Bernie Sanders say a woman will never be president? Is this happening because Warren is a liar, like how she lied about being Native American for years? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.